Hi, everybody, and welcome to Dr. D's Rants. Today, I want to talk a little bit about why I believe in reincarnation. So, as you might know from some of my previous videos, I'm an academic. I teach at a university in New Zealand, and my area of specialization is Buddhism, particularly Hinduism and Buddhism, Indian Buddhism. So, for many years, pretty much my entire adult life, I've studied Indian systems which have a belief in reincarnation or rebirth. I often explain in my classes the difference between the two is it's a technical difference, but it's an important one in the sense that reincarnation is really about a soul taking on a new body. So it reincarnates. Whereas the idea of rebirth does not assume that there is some kind of underlying soul or substance that gets reborn. Now, Buddhists, for example, believe in rebirth but not reincarnation. Why? Because Buddhists don't believe in a soul. But without going into a lot of detail about the nuances of that, both Hinduism and Buddhism, and there are other indigenous systems around the world that maintain a belief in reincarnation or rebirth. Now, in the Indian context, really rebirth or reincarnation is really a function of karma. That there's an aspect of us, whether it's our soul or whether it's some kind of latent mental conditioning or something that continues after death and eventually will take on a new bodily form. And the idea is that this has happened an infinite number of times in the past and will continue on forever until we reach at some point in the future where we can escape the cycle of birth and death. Now, in these systems, rebirth is not a good thing, right? Because this repeated cycle of death and rebirth is characterized by suffering, such as old age, sickness, death. So the goal becomes, how do we escape? And there's different methods on how that's done. They often involve some type of yoga, some type of meditation, ascetic practice, in order to attain a special knowledge to give a person direct insight into the nature of reality in order that they might escape. Now, I think many people, especially brought up in a Western context, that don't have this idea of reincarnation or have sort of adopted a materialist paradigm or a physicalist paradigm that equates the mind with the brain, assume that ideas about reincarnation are metaphysical, they're not founded on any evidence, and therefore they can be discarded out of hand. That it's not an incoherent idea, it's just one for which there is no proof that we're dead, we're gone. And this was more or less the culture that I was brought up in. I mean, I was raised Catholic, but not strictly so, and was never really convinced with this idea of either permanently going to heaven or hell. Then, at a certain point, I discovered the work of Ian Stevenson, who some of you may or may not know, but his most influential and widely known book is this book right here, sort of 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation. Now, Ian Stevenson was a psychiatrist out of the University of Virginia that devoted many decades of his life, I think really beginning in possibly the 60s, to studying cases of children that remembered things from a previous life. And over time, he and his colleagues collected thousands of these cases. And so this book that I just showed you, 20 Cases of Reincarnation, are probably 20 of the most suggestive cases that Stevenson looks at. Now, somebody who worked closely with Stevenson and who's continued his work is this guy, Jim Tucker. And this is a book that Jim Tucker wrote called Return to Life, where he looks at extraordinary cases of children who remember past lives. And there's one particular study that he's done, which is in his chapter 4, called The Third James. And it's about a boy named James Leininger, who, from about the time he was 2 years old, he's an American boy, started having these night terrors of dying in this fiery plane crash. And as time went on, James started to recall more and more information about the crash and the events surrounding it, to the point where he claimed that he was a World War II pilot, gave a specific name, the kind of plane that he flew on, the ship that he flew from, and claimed that he was shot down during a dogfight with the Japanese and died in the Pacific when his plane crashed into the water and caught fire. Now, to make a long story short, James's father and mother were both pretty devout Christians and didn't have any belief in reincarnation whatsoever. So James's father took it upon himself to prove that this couldn't be the case. But as he collected more and more evidence and corroborated the details, he ultimately came to the conclusion that yes, his son was remembering a past life as this World War II fighter pilot. And I could go on and on. I won't, just to say that having been exposed to these studies and this information really pretty much has made my mind up that this could really be a real thing. And I recommend to anybody who's interested to follow that up with these books, do some homework on YouTube. There's a great book that was just written by James's parents, and it's called Soul Survivor, which is about their whole experience with their son. If you want to know more about me, check out my website. You can find me at douglasosto.com, and check out my channel. I've got a whole bunch of other videos on lots of different things. So take it easy. Bye.